Well, Casey, in the past few weeks, we have been talking a lot about a different topic related to AI, which is what is happening with AI and jobs.
Yes, you recently wrote an article saying that we were starting to see the early signs of AI job loss. And so we threw it out to our listeners to say, what have you been experiencing?
Yeah, so today we're going to go through some of the many, many responses we got to our call out for stories about AI and whether it's taking your jobs. And I think we should start with a question that I think captures a common frustration that we hear from listeners.
Oh, that we say like and too much?
That we're too handsome? No, here is listener Christian Danielson.
Hey, Casey and Kevin, this is Christian from Hood River, Oregon. I've noticed in a lot of interviews, yours and others, with tech executives that almost all of them seem to think there's going to be a categorically different level of job displacement due to this technology rolling out. And yet, almost all of them also don't seem like they have any real concrete plans or are putting nearly the amount of energy they are into their products around how to mitigate that. It just seems like they don't feel like it's really their responsibility or it's someone else's problem to manage that side of things. So I'm hoping you might pose the question why it is that the government shouldn't really, frankly, just tax the shit out of their technology, both as a way to potentially compensate people for all this wealth that's going to be concentrated into the hands of a very small number of people, and also to slow the technology down a bit until our aging policy process can kind of catch up. Thanks.
Yeah. So why is there no sort of plan from these executives, Kevin? And what do you think about the idea of taxes?
Yeah, I think it's a really useful and important point. I think many of the executives and the companies building this technology, their goal is just to automate the jobs away, right? They are not thinking or talking much about what will happen on the other side of that to all the people whose jobs are displaced if they are successful. And, some of them have done some studies or made some suggestions. Like Sam Altman actually funded a big research project where they gave people these unconditional cash payments and sort of studied what would UBI or something like UBI do. And Dario Amodei from Anthropic has actually proposed something like our listener is suggesting. He called it the token tax. And basically the idea is if you have all these AI models out there generating billions of dollars of revenue by automating people's jobs, some portion of that should go back to fund the sort of welfare programs and social safety net for the people who are displaced. But I will say that most people I've talked to about this issue inside the AI industry are not even getting that far. They are not even proposing solutions, or they're just kind of doing hand waving about how the government will have to step in and take care of people who lose their jobs this way. I would like to see a lot more people not only coming up with ideas, but actually advocating for those ideas with policymakers.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing I would say is that, it's not up to the corporations to run our society. That is the job of our elected officials, who should absolutely have plans in place. They should be developing them right now for a world where we do experience significant job loss through automation. I think most lawmakers are probably getting on board at this point with the idea that this is, if nothing else, a real threat. And so it's unfortunate that there has just been so little movement in this direction, because I do think a lot of this is going to come true, and we're going to wish we had, better plans in place.
Yeah.
Now for some listener stories. This first one is from the perspective of a young person navigating a tighter labor market. Listener Sarah writes, "Hey, Hard Fork. I'm one of the junior software engineers who was thoroughly depressed by the latest episode on the AI job apocalypse, mostly because it was exactly in line with my current experience. Aw. I graduated in 2022 and felt very lucky to get an amazing job straight out of college, where I felt very supported and valued by my team. That entire team was laid off last year to be replaced with cheaper human labor, not AI. And after a grueling job search, I ended up at a very large company that's a well-respected household name. They're not really a tech company, but the leadership wants us to embrace that culture and has proclaimed us to be an AI-first company. Developers are evaluated based on what percentage of our code we say is written by AI, and those with low scores are laid off. Obviously, we all say that most of our code is written by AI now. It's been thoroughly depressing working here, and I've been looking to move jobs since about my second week, but there are almost no openings for someone with only 2 years of experience. I think my only real chance is to stick around for a year and hope that my career still exists by then. With some luck, maybe I can make it into a mid-level position before the ladder is pulled up behind me. I feel terrible for the people just now graduating. Wow, does this one break my heart.
Whew. Yeah.
Like this, can I just say, this is what we've been talking about the whole time.
Yes.
Is people like Sarah having this exact experience.
Yes, and what makes this particularly bleak is this is something that I actually do think is going to become a major problem for these companies, is that they are just going to lose their pipeline of their future leaders, right? If you are replacing your junior workers with AI or just forcing everyone to use AI, you are really neglecting your own future because you are not doing the kinds of skill building and training and mentorship that is going to allow people like Sarah, who may be your next executive, to build the skills and the experience that she needs to come in and do that job. Let her cook.
But here's the problem. I think it's so silly that companies like this are creating incentives for their workers to lie to them about how they're using AI, right? You're just going to get a very distorted sense of what AI is doing at your company. And then if you lay off those people because you're thinking, oh, AI is already doing 80% of everything, then you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble. So this just seems like a classic self-defeating, like corporate thing. These people need to get a better sense of what's really happening. But in any case, Sarah, thank you for writing in. And, here's hoping that your next job is better than this one.
All right, here's a story we got from an executive. This is from listener Joseph Esparaguera. He writes, I'm the CFO of a $150 million plus home remodeling business. Wow.
Okay, brag.
I'm in the wrong business. I'm reaching out because I think I'm living in the awkward middle of the AI transformation story. Not at a tech startup, not at a Fortune 500, but in the trenches of a mid-sized company where AI could and should have massive impact, especially in accounting and HR. He continues, I'm trying to get ahead of the curve. I want my current staff to be the ones who survive and thrive as AI reshapes their fields, but I'm hitting resistance. They'll use AI to clean up an email or write a job posting, but they don't seem to grasp or want to grasp the bigger opportunity. I believe AI should let us do more with fewer people, and the ones who adapt will stay. But if my current team doesn't evolve, I'll be forced to hire different people who will. Casey, what do you make of this email?
So I suspect that this is playing out at a lot of companies where you have managers who are more excited about AI than their workers are. I think this is true of lots of different kinds of software, by the way. I remember I used to get really excited about like project management software like Asana, and I would try to get my old company to like adopt it. And then like that had actually happened. The company adopted it and no one wanted to use it because it was like, why do I want to go like fill out a new form every day saying what my tasks are? So it's like a lot of times like software has more obvious value to the manager than it does to the worker who, in many cases, is just trying to get to 5 p.m. so they can like get home to their family. So I think this is like kind of a durable tension in workplaces. At the same time, I think that this is going to be part of like the rough part of this transition is more and more managers being like, no, really, like you actually have to use this thing because if you're doing it another way, it is going to make you slower and worse at your job. And so I expect that there are going to be a lot of clashes. By the way, I think this opens up a lot of opportunity for listeners like Sarah who can show up at the front door and say, yes, I know how to use AI and you're not going to have to twist my arm into doing it. But I think there's going to be a lot of pain along the way.
Yeah, I think this is a really important moment for a lot of companies that are starting to think about how to use AI. And my intuition on this is that the companies that are having the most success with AI right now are the companies that are doing this in a very bottoms-up way, right? They are soliciting ideas from workers about how they could use AI to maybe improve the parts of their job that they don't love doing or maybe eliminate them altogether. They're holding sort of hackathons or having sort of days set aside to just get together in a room and figure out how to use this stuff. They are not sort of imposing it from the top down, right? They are not the ones sending memos out saying everyone must use AI and we're going to be tracking how much you're using AI. And if you don't use AI, we're going to replace you with someone who will. I think that is a short-term solution. And that's the direction, unfortunately, that I think a lot of companies have chosen to go. But I don't think that's a strategy for durable transformation. You really need to get people excited about this and thinking about what it could do for them.
Well, so what does Joseph do here? Because, it sounds like if he doesn't act, there isn't going to be any bottoms-up enthusiasm for AI at his company.
I think what you do is you basically start a competition among your employees. You say, we're going to set aside a day or a half a day, or we're going to do an offsite sometime in the next few months. We're going to give everyone access to all of the tools. We're going to buy them subscriptions to all of the tools they might possibly need to do their jobs using AI. And the person who comes up with the best idea, or the team that comes up with the best idea,
Gets to live. We'll call it the Hunger Games.
no, they get a bonus. They get a reward of some kind, and you kind of make it a thing where people are excited to contribute because it is in their best interest to do so. That's what I would do if I were the CFO of a company, which, let's say it, we're all glad I'm not.
Well, but the day is young. Who knows what might happen to you later, Kevin? All right, now let's hear from a listener who feels critical of the approach that some executives are taking to AI. So this person writes, "Hey guys, while my job isn't being replaced by AI yet, my boss is completely obsessed with it without actually doing anything meaningful with it himself. He's effectively put a hiring freeze on all process jobs because he believes that AI can do them better and, more importantly, cheaper. I'm in charge of the sales and marketing teams, and my very meager headcount ask as we grow rapidly is challenged or ignored because there's an AI tool he heard of somewhere. I get messages at all hours from him with links to hacky LinkedIn posts full of emoji bullet points about how Excel, Word, PowerPoint, or insert program here will soon be obsolete thanks to these new AI tools, or here are 20 AI miracles to revolutionize your workload." Our listener says, "I'm far from being an AI skeptic. I make use of it daily, but honestly, maybe I will lose my job by my own hand soon because his attitude is exhausting. And right now, I just need a few more human people without spending all my time going down rabbit holes of half solutions or privacy nightmares. I think the time spent on reading up on AI and testing bad AI right now isn't considered enough when looking at the cost-benefit analysis." So, Kevin, what do you make of this listener's dilemma?
This is a perspective from what I would say is a middle manager, someone who is not at the top of a company, but not at the entry level either, who is in charge of managing people, but who's also getting a lot of pressure from the people higher up to sort of implement AI, and not only pressure to implement AI, but pressure not to hire humans to do the work. And I can totally sympathize with that. I think there's a lot of that going on right now. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, what I would want to understand here is, like, what are these companies' actual goals, and why is it that the big boss's only idea is to throw a new tool at it? Because in my experience, you never really accomplish a business goal just by like introducing a new tool into the workplace. In fact, that can often really slow things down. There's kind of a learning curve that people need to get over. So this just feels like one where there needs to be a conversation with the boss and say, listen, like, I'm happy to explore all of these tools, but that at best needs to be kind of a side project. Let's figure out, like, what objective are we cruising toward, and can I please make my case that I actually need human beings to achieve that?
Yeah, I think the fear that a lot of executives are feeling right now is this fear that somewhere, probably in San Francisco, there is a startup of a bunch of kids who are using AI to do what they do with like 10 people instead of, hundreds or thousands of people. And I think that is a real fear. And so I think one way that they could try to address that fear is by just like racing to put as much AI into everything they do as possible. But I think we're seeing that that does have a cost, not only in terms of people getting upset or fearful about that, but in terms of all of this sort of distraction and chaos at the management level as people try to figure out, like, how do we tell the boss that we actually can't do the thing they want us to do with AI, that we actually need humans instead? So I think this is going to be a very messy next couple of years for big companies.
Well, and here's what I would say to the managers who are worried about these 10-person Silicon Valley startups. They're mostly high on mushrooms, and they have extremely complicated relationships with their polycules. I think you actually will be able to outcompete them, at least for a little while.
Yeah, just stay off the sauce. Okay, finally, let's listen to a voice memo from listener George Dilthy, who's trying to find some short-term solutions to keep the people he trains employable in this changing market.
Hey guys, my name's George Dilthy. I live in Stamford, Connecticut, and I work at a high growth B2B SaaS startup called Clay. And my role, I actually head up the support team. So one of the things that I've sort of leaned into is trying to hire really, really good people for our support team, but also sort of like turning those folks into kind of expert generalists. So the idea being that like they're rotating through different parts of the company, sort of learning about product or learning about engineering or learning about marketing. with the hope that they've sort of gained like a number of different skills across the company and can sort of just like generalize into any other departments. So just wanted to share. Thought it was pretty interesting. Love the show. Thanks so much.
Kevin, what do you make of this one?
I like this one. I think that support and customer service are always talked about as sort of being the first jobs to go under the new AI regime. And we've talked about some companies that are trying to develop these AI customer service chatbots. But I think if you are working in customer service, you don't want to just be sort of reading off the script on a computer or trying to help people solve their problems. You really want to sort of offer a more bespoke, personalized, high-touch kind of service. And one of my long-term complaints about tech companies is that they just do not take customer service seriously. Like for many years, people have said, there's no way to get someone on the phone if something happens to your Facebook account or your Instagram account or your YouTube account. And I think people at the senior levels of these companies should be doing a rotation through customer service just to get a sense of what their customers and users are actually experiencing. And maybe that would lead them to invest more in these areas. So I think this is a good idea. I think that the experience of doing customer service, if you are good at it and are not just sort of reading off a script on a computer, is useful in many, many jobs. I think that in the future, that will become very important, especially as the more sort of rote and routine parts of the job get automated. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that people who work in customer support roles often have a much better sense of what's happening in the business at the ground level as executives. And so I love the idea that we're creating new opportunities for those people. I think that that those folks can often just bring experiences to the roles that you're just truly not going to get with an AI system.
All right, Casey, have we said enough on AI and jobs this week?
I think we have. We thank all of the listeners who wrote in to share their stories. I imagine this will not be the last time we return to this subject, but it's very clear, Kevin, that already we're starting to see the effects of AI on the job market, and I imagine that's only going to accelerate from here.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have some more conversations on this topic coming up soon. We won't spoil them now, but let's just say this is an area where I think we are going to spend a lot of time because this is something that many, many people out there are starting to experience.
Hey, that's the end of this clip. If you liked what you saw, head on over to our page and subscribe, and you can get the full podcast. We do a show like this almost every week on tech and the future. Head on over there now and subscribe.